Right now, Andre Dickens has thrown his hat into the ring. We're going to get a detailed look at his run for a second term as the mayor of Atlanta. Also, the White House calling for massive cuts to the Department of Education. We're going to get an update from Washington, D.C. And bags fly free? Well, not anymore with Southwest. Find out how much of a hit this could be for the low-cost carrier. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite experts on to give their expertise and share their take on today's top stories. We also try to have a little fun as well. We start off this Wednesday on the campaign trail. Andre Dickens made it official yesterday. He wants another term as mayor of the city of Atlanta. Dickens is kicking off his campaign with support of some huge names in Georgia politics, including former Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin, Ambassador Andrew Young, and former State Senator Jason Carter. Dickens, elected in 2021 after forcing a runoff. Yesterday, he reminded supporters that his goal was always to serve 2 terms, which would allow him to fully implement his plans for Atlanta. During his announcements, he shared what the campaign will look like.
We're going to hit all 12 districts over the next month. Within the month, we're going to do events in 12 districts, and it's going to look like high energy, everything from outdoor events to indoor events to coffee shops to barber shops to restaurants. Senior citizen outreach is going to be really big during this campaign, just like it is in my day-to-day as mayor.
All right, here to offer a deep dive into the race for mayor, Fred Hicks, a regular contributor to 11Alive's Georgia Vote, who has worked with hundreds of political campaigns over the last 20 years. Fred, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chelsea. Glad to be here.
All right. Now, what's your initial take on this and when we talk about the mayor and his standing when we talk about his reelection?
So I think this is to be expected, this run for re-election. This is the norm in Atlanta politics, whether you look back in 1973 with Maynard Jackson all the way through this election. The lone exception to this really being Mayor Bottoms 4 years ago, and then when Maynard Jackson returned in the early 90s for his 3rd term, he didn't run for another term after that. But otherwise, this is what Atlanta mayors do.
Oh, yep, this is what Atlanta mayors do. Now, what can Dickens really hang his hat on truly?
I think he has 3 major accomplishments from the first term. Number one, the crime rate. When he became mayor, from then to now, we're looking at about a 20-21% so reduction in the crime rate. Number 2, when he was elected mayor, we were facing the threat of Buckhead leaving the city. He was able to keep the city together. That's a huge win for him. And I think also number 3, when we're always looking at the threat of the airport being taken away from the city's leadership and put under the state's leadership, he's been able to keep control of that as well. So I think those are 3 major accomplishments: public safety, keeping the city together, and keeping the world's largest airport under city control.
Fred, I'm not sure you saw it, but we had him on the Take last Friday. We asked him about the issues swirling around the departure of the city inspector general. Is that something that could hurt his campaign, you think?
Well, I think that there are a couple of things that people will talk about throughout the course of this campaign that where they like more answers. Number one, top of mind right now, of course, is the Office of the Inspector General, what his plans are for the future around that position, what the changes to the legislation mean for that position, and transparency overall. Then, of course, the sort of ever persistent thing from his first term is the police training facility and whether or not voters will be allowed to vote on that, even though the building, from my understanding, the facility is largely constructed right now. But I think those 2 issues, which really kind of center around the idea of transparency in government, I think for his detractors, that's something that they'll talk about a lot.
Is there any other stumbling blocks out there that could hurt him?
Atlanta's still struggling with the affordable housing matter and homelessness. I think there's a general feeling in the city from long-term residents that the city could do better around its cleanliness. And of course, there's always the issue of what happens with transportation. And since Atlanta is a blue dot in a red state in a red country, how he and how the city are able to navigate the world of Donald Trump would be a big thing to watch over the next few months.
Well, no one has declared, a run against him. I mean, I guess that's a kind of a feather in his cap. Do you suspect there'll be anybody that will step up to the plate and try to run against him?
Atlanta mayors tend to win re-election at a pretty 85, 88% clip. The closest election that we've seen in terms of a re-election for a mayor was about 30 years ago when then Council President Marvin Arrington Sr. challenged then Mayor Bill Campbell, and that was a hotly contested race. But other than that, mayors do usually face some sort of token opposition in their second run, and they tend to win overwhelmingly. But that being said, Chelsea, I think that when we survey the landscape, the two names that come to mind as potential challengers to him that would be sort of noteworthy, although I don't think they would achieve success, would be former Council President Felicia Mora, who lost to Mayor Dickens in 2021. And then there's the potential, I've heard this name, I heard the name a few months ago, I haven't heard much of it since, was former council member Keisha Waits as a person who was thinking about it, kicking the tires. But again, I don't think either of those will present a significant challenge to the mayor.
All right, Fred Hicks, really appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us today, all right?
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. All right, other top stories on this Wednesday that we're looking at. We're working to learn the name of the man charged with slashing tents at an Atlanta homeless encampment. And will he, when his first appearance will be in court. The suspect is charged with criminal trespass and damage to property and reckless conduct. This is the same area of the city an employee killed Cornelius Taylor back in January when they were clearing using a bulldozer to clear that encampment. So we'll get the latest on that, keep you updated. Investigators believe there is more victims in a fake sports recruiter. Gainesville police arrested Malcolm Walker. We talked to a mom who says she lost $900 on an empty promise to get her son into a college football program. She heard from 50 other parents in 9 states. We celebrate Ambassador Andy Young on his 93rd birthday today, making a lifetime of service both here in Georgia and the nation. Young has been a key figure in shaping American history. When you drive around the city today, make sure you look up at the Georgia Credit Union sign above Peachtree Street. We're wishing Andy Young, Ambassador Andy Young, a happy birthday. All right, looking at our 7-day outlook, it shows another perfect day for us. Weather-wise, it's going to be beautiful on the outside. Temperatures are above the average, right around 75 degrees for a high, but nowhere near the record of 83. I don't think we'll get that high, of course. We'll have the sunshine in abundance. Now, don't get used to it because the clouds will come back in as we head into our Thursday. Mostly cloudy skies to start today, and then by the afternoon, a 40% chance for some scattered showers. Could be a rumble of thunder or two. We have to watch that as well. 69 degrees will be the high temperature. We rebound somewhat on Friday. We're going to keep the clouds around. It's only a 20% chance for an isolated shower. 74 degrees for the high on Saturday. We'll be watching Saturday and Sunday very closely. Got a front that's going to move through that could bring severe weather to our area. We'll keep you updated on that. That system hasn't even made it into the United States as of yet, but as it does, could bring that severe weather to our area. We'll watch that for you. Keep you updated. Don't go anywhere. We're back right after this. Welcome back to the show. Major cuts with the Department of Education with the announcement of nearly half its staff, that's roughly 1,300 career employees, will be out of a job. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr, who's been covering politics for years now. And Alice, this sounds like just the first step on the road to maybe permanently shutting down this department. Break down the White House's move on this.
Yeah, good morning, Chesley. And that is pretty much out in the open. We heard from Education Secretary Linda McMahon that she acknowledged this was the first step toward attempting to shut down the Department of Education, something President Trump has spoken about repeatedly, both on the campaign trail and then since coming into office. Important to note, and she acknowledged that that cannot be done without Congress getting on board, without an act of Congress. But she described the moves today of cutting close to half the staff of the Department of Education, some 1,300 employees. She described that as eliminating bureaucratic bloat and did say it was a step toward that ultimate goal of shutting it down. President Trump believes in trying to put education policy decisions back in the hands of the states. And there's been a growing movement of a lot of parents who believe in local control, who believe in parent choice on school choice, on where they want to send their kids. So this is kind of a part of that movement, though I've also spoken with the mother of a child with special needs who fears that the most important services for the most vulnerable students could potentially be impacted without having federal oversight over maybe how the states would be making decisions for special education, for instance. Secretary McMahon did say that the department will still deliver on special education funding and other statutory programs as they're continuing to work through how this is going to look.
Okay, all right. Let's shift gears a little bit here, Alice. A new round of tariffs kicked in at midnight, and in response to that, the European Union has announced its own countermeasurements. So what's involved here, and what kind of real-world impacts can we see with these moves?
Yeah, in this instance, we're talking about 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports from around the world that President Trump imposed starting today on, all trading partners that we bring in steel and aluminum from. And we already saw the reaction from the European Union putting retaliatory tariffs on some $28 billion worth of U.S. U.S. goods that are imported into Europe. And this is on everything from boats to motorbikes to alcohol. It's all part of this back and forth that we've seen in recent days involving Canada as well. Just yesterday, the president had put into place a threat to double the metal tariffs on Canada, which is the largest export market of metals, these metals to the U.S. That then was backed off of because it had been dependent on a 25% electricity surcharge that Ontario's premier had imposed. Both of them backed off. And, you know, it's kind of this, we've talked about it before, this step forward, then kind of cooler heads prevail. And we'll see between now and, I should note, April 1st is when those EU tariffs are supposed to take effect, but the door is left open to potential negotiations between now and then on those taking effect as well.
Yeah, we'll continue to watch that very, very closely. Finally, Alice, the government shutdown potential, right? The countdown is on. The House, we know, passed the GOP's plan yesterday, and now it's on to the Senate. Do you think Democrats will back this thing and Trump will be able to sign this to avoid a shutdown?
Yeah, I mean, this is another one that we've been talking about that really is a difficult bind for Democrats because they don't want to be labeled as being responsible for shutting down the government, particularly, you know, that would mean furloughs for government workers, you know, not getting their paychecks, who are already under this incredible pressure because of what's been happening with cuts in the Department of Government Efficiency. But at the same time, that's exactly why some Democrats do want to kind of push back at this moment and say, we don't like what the Trump administration has been doing. This is kind of a very rare leverage point for Democrats who are not in control in either the House or the Senate, clearly not the White House. So they're facing those kind of crosswinds and trying to figure out what they're going to do with that government shutdown deadline late Friday at the end of this week.
All right. Alice Barr, always appreciate your insight. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks.
All right. Right now, heightened awareness on Georgia's unemployment figures. Let's talk about this. Currently, the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts unemployment rate at 3.6%. That's held that same rate since last June. But recent data from Wallet Hub indicates that Georgia's unemployment claims have experienced a slight increase from where it was this time just last year. Let's welcome in Chip Lupo with Wallet Hub. And let's go inside the numbers here, Chip. Let's get started with your initial take on Georgia's unemployment standing. Is it time to relax or is it time for concern?
Actually, I think Georgia's actually in pretty good shape overall. I mean, yes, there has been a slight rise in the unemployment rate from 3.1 to 3.7 since 2024. Now, claims have decreased by 8.7 week over week from February 2024. Now, Georgia's decrease was 9.79%, so that's a good number.
Put that in perspective for me. Like, I guess when you talk about our number versus, are you talking about that versus the national number or just states around us?
Right, versus the national number. It's 8.7 nationwide from same week in February 2024, or 2025, sorry. And that's for Georgia, it was 9.79%. Now that's from the week February 24 or 17th to 24th, 2025. So that's actually a good number. Now, the change from this same week last year was a decrease in 2.17%.
Okay. All right.
And from year to year is actually, now the increase, now it's a slight increase. It's less than 1%. So I think folks in Georgia no need to panic. I mean, it's less than 1%, 0.68%.
Yeah, I'm panicking. I was panicking. So you're saying we should be at ease a little bit here. All right. One study from the University of Georgia says Georgia's economy is. Go ahead.
Keep in mind also is that what Georgia has going for it, it was one of the first states out of the gate running post-COVID, and the economy started booming statewide. So I think they're still riding the highs from that.
Gotcha. All right, check it out. The University of Georgia says the Georgia economy is projected to grow by about 2.5% this year. How do you feel that will hit unemployment figures?
I think that's going to be a tremendous boost for Georgia. Now, consider also is that Georgia has a pretty stable, or at least a pretty prevalent federal workforce in the state. So you figure that with what's going on with job cuts in the federal workforce, that there's going to be room for these people in the private sector in Georgia.
The massive cuts that we keep hearing about, and today we heard about the Department of Education. Is that going to flood the gates? Because you're saying that's good for the private sector. Would that flood the gates and then begin to bring it back down, you think? I want you to project here a little bit what you see coming down the pike.
Well, again, now we're talking about in Georgia. In Georgia, you know, it's military installations and a lot of federal installations in and around a lot of interstate. So there's a pretty strong federal presence in the state of Georgia. Now, if some of these cuts affect Georgia, again, eminently qualified people, there will be room, because Georgia does, for the most part, have a robust economy. There will be room for these folks. And even for folks who want to maybe relocate from the D.C. area into Georgia, this would be a good place to establish some roots and get a steady job in the private sector.
And you're looking at the fact that we could probably sustain that. Even people moving in will be fine. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing, too, also is that Georgia, out of the 50 states, ranked 16th overall with a fairly low 16th with 86 claims per 100,000 people in the labor force. So I think that's a pretty low number.
Okay. All right. Chip, really appreciate your insight, man. I mean, we'll be looking at this very closely. Of course, we'll invite you back on. Hopefully you're right? We'll be able to sustain it. We'll be able to sustain this. Again, we appreciate it. Chip Lupo with Wallet Hub. Thanks for joining us today. All right, folks, plenty more stories when we come back. This is The Take. You know what it is on 11Alive Plus. We're back right after this. All right, let's take a look at the tarmac at Hartsfield-Jackson today, where one airline flies in and out of the world's busiest airport is Southwest. But soon Southwest will be removing one of its long-term enjoyed perks. Yep. Starting on May 28th, all passengers outside of the top-tier fare class will have to pay for bags. Passengers with Rapid Rewards A-List, business class, they'll still get 2 bags for free. Now, the move is being made as a way to try to boost profits for the airline. This comes just months after the Southwest said it plans to ditch the open seat policy. The airline is expected to begin operating flights with passengers assigned seats next year. Some passengers we talked to at Hartsfield said they're not really happy about this move.
The way the economy is, everybody likes the free baggage, and I mean, I guess you got to do what you got to do, but I don't think too many people are going to be happy with that.
That is the only reason to fly Southwest is the free bags. So you said May 28th. May 28th of this year?
Of this year.
Oh my gosh, that's gonna suck.
Yeah, of this year, May 28th, yes, this year. Here to talk more about it and how it's gonna hit travelers, which we've already heard about, Morgan Ward, with the assistant professor for marketing at Emory University. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right, now let's talk about this thing. What's your initial take on the move of what Southwest is doing?
Well, it's not that surprising, to be honest. Southwest has been having some troubles financially, and I think what they're doing is trying to find new ways to generate income for themselves. And so the 2 ways that traditionally airlines have done that is to have you paying for the seats that you purchase specifically and paying for your bags. Now, an airline like Spirit has also found additional ways to get people to pay higher prices. But this is a pretty traditional way for airlines to generate more income.
But how will this affect them as far as, like, if you're used to flying Southwest, you're used to getting your bags free, used to these perks, now all of a sudden they change this up on you, changing the seating and all that kind of arrangement. How will this hit them? Will you think it'll hit them hard, or will they just continue to keep on?
So my prediction is that it won't hit them immediately, but I think that it is going to change people's perception of the brand. Mm-hmm. So Southwest is a very friendly communal type of a brand in the sense that it had very democratized seating. It told you that it was sort of like in support of you. They gave you free bags, the bags flew free. And I think this changes the perceptions that consumers are going to have as sort of a friend to just a very traditional corporate entity. And I don't think that they're going to see it as a differentiated brand anymore. That doesn't mean they won't fly it anymore. It might mean that they might not choose it above other brands if they have options. But again, people don't have that many options on any given route. So it's possible that people don't really change what they fly, but they may change over time how they feel about the brand.
We just heard from 2 passengers there that talked about the perks, and maybe that's the only reason why they fly Southwest. How important are these perks to people who take these flights?
I think that, I've heard across the board, nobody has been happy. Nobody said, oh, I'm really glad I'm going to be able to pay for my bags now. I do think that consumers are going to be disgruntled about this, but truthfully, there's not any other options that don't make you pay for your bag. So despite the fact that they're going to be unhappy with the new payment, I don't think that there's another option or opportunity to have your bags fly free. They were the only airline that did that.
So with that said, is this the time for another airline to maybe swoop in and take that perk and get others to?
I think it's an excellent question. I don't think that the financials appear to work. It worked for a long time when Southwest had the financial wherewithal to be able to support that, but it doesn't look like a airline brand can actually support having bags fly free for a number of reasons. One, the competition isn't doing it. Two, with just the increase in fuel costs, it's actually really expensive to have bags fly free without consumers paying for them. And three, Southwest, people were choosing them based on bags flying free, and so they were actually carrying far more bags than most airlines. So it's possible that if you become the airline where your bags fly free, all of a sudden you are carrying far more bags, and that becomes expensive.
Gotcha. Morgan, I don't know if you know this or not, but you know how you get on the flight, or you make it all the way up to the gate, and then you're in the back part of the line, and they say, okay, you can't bring a bag on, and then they check it at the, will they charge you there? I don't know if you know this or not, but will they charge you then as well, or is that free?
That's actually a great question. I don't know the answer. They actually haven't released, as far as I know, the prices that they're going to charge you. And of course, not everybody is going to pay. So if you are on the A-list preferred, you will have 2 bags still flying free. And I think just traditional A-list, you would at least have 1 bag flying free. So it may depend on what your status is at the airline.
All right. We always want to get your expertise. So when you're booking a flight, what kind of perks do you look for?
When I'm booking a flight?
Yep.
I used to be an avid Southwest traveler,
really?
But now I'm 100% Delta.
Oh, wow. Look at you.
I know.
And now it's the same across the board. So I guess it depends on now. We're looking for different prices when we go, right? Whoever has the cheapest flight, right? That's who you select.
And the destinations and the number of stops. I think people are weighing a lot of things when they're flying these days. They do have a lot of options in terms of those things. And so everybody has a different way they're prioritizing the attributes that airlines are offering.
All right, sounds good. Professor Ward, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. I know we'll have you back again sometime soon talking about these flights. It's getting close to summertime, so it's time to go.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, take care. Have a good day. All right, we're back with my final take when we return. Stay right there. All right, before we go, my final take. Have you heard this latest trend on TikTok? Men are trimming back their eyelashes to look more manly. What is this about? Where did we get this from, right? Eyelashes help us. They have purpose. You got to know that. Number one, they are blockers. They prevent dust and debris and splashes from getting into your eye. Number two, eyelashes reduce ultraviolet light from coming in. They protect your cornea about 12 to 24%. They block that out. They also act as an alarm or trigger. When something is close to your eye, it allows you to blink to protect your eye. Whatever this trend is, let's put an end to it. Next, they're going to say you can't wear glasses because it's not manly, or you can't wear shades because it's not manly. What is that about? Thanks for joining us, folks. We say goodbye with your moment of Zen today. This is coming to you from Florida. Wish I was there.